Thanks, Carter. And finally, Charlotte Andrews. the Vice President.
Hello, and welcome to my Outdoor Leadership Academe Capstone presentation. Thank you for coming. I was new to the school in 7th grade. I had done some family trips and camps, but I was not super comfortable outdoors. 7th grade river trip was a little bit rough, but it was worth it. For the rest of middle school, I think I cried at least once on all the trips, but I was still growing. During the summers, I had learned to kayak camps and sunbeam with Elliot. The first year, I couldn't get over the wet exit. Being in the boat was absolutely terrifying. Then the next year, I got a wet exit as I used it a lot. Overall, in middle school, I was developing my self-leadership skills, learning how to take care of myself and do hard things. The experience of the 9th grade river trip was a mix of fear and joy. Kayaking, still to this day, scares me so much. However, I kayaked the entire trip. I did swim 7 times, so big shout out to Elliot, Bozo, and Ethan for dragging me to shore all those times. However, every time I swam, I got back in my boat and kept going. I love being on the river. It brings me so much joy when I'm not cursing, trying not to die. In the winter, I went on the 5th grade Nordic trip. This was my first leadership opportunity, and I mostly just helped the kids get up. In the spring, we had Grand Gulch. This was a great trip. It was a great opportunity for me to work on my navigation skills. Because one day, we didn't know where we were. In 9th grade, I began to emerge as a leader in the outdoors, working on my skills and confidence. 10th grade started off with a bang on the coast. Let's say this trip was a good test in mental toughness. This trip was very rainy, and the perpetual dampness made it pretty difficult. In addition, there was a 3 a.m. tide crossing that was definitely the peak of discomfort. I remember not being sure how much I was crying because there was so much rain. In the spring, we went to Red Rocks. This was another weather trip. We had the legendary 60-mile-an-hour winds that prompted us to sleep under the bus. I did not enjoy it. Also, during the winter, I signed up for a community table event at Galena for Nordic skiing. I ended up taking a group of 10 refugees from the Twin Falls Refugee Center skiing. It was really fun, despite the fact that there was a major language barrier. I think they spoke Arabic, but I could be wrong. I mostly helped them get up, which was a bit of a challenge because some of them were probably 20 years old and about 200 pounds. However, everyone was having a blast. This really inspired me to help people have access to the outdoors because it could be really beneficial. In 10th grade, I worked on finding enjoyment in hard situations, a skill I think is important for outdoor leaders. In 11th grade, we started the year off with the Sawtooth trip. This trip doesn't get a lot of enthusiasm in general, but I found it very enjoyable and meaningful. My group was led by Greg Travelstead, the founder of Pulaski User Group. I really enjoyed how we had purpose in the outdoors and how present being trail work made HCB. The following summer, I went on another pug trip with Flourish and the Pulaski User Group. It was very meaningful. Then in the winter, I went on the backcountry skiing trip, which was so much fun. Something I really appreciate about backcountry skiing is how much control you have over your risk. For example, you can decide where to ski and mitigate your avalanche risk. Then the spring was solo. Now this trip does get a lot of hype. This was a tough one for me. I didn't complete the solo, which is incredibly hard for me. I had basically a 12-hour-long panic attack and some other issues. I tried as hard as I could, but ultimately I decided to leave on the first morning. This decision to give up was also very hard, especially because of the pressure from the whole school and that I had put on myself. Solo was seen as this trip that is a rite of passage and everyone has to do it. I felt like I also had to, because I should. I'm usually so comfortable outdoors and by myself. But this situation exposed some things about myself, and I appreciate it for that. It's taken me over a year to wrestle with this. I even wrote my comment essay about it. I'm still working through how I feel about it. Overall, my junior year, I feel like I learned a lot. I kicked off my senior year with the final fall camp out. It was my first school event where I was a senior and had to be a leader. Overall, it went well and was not very difficult. Then I led the 9th grade river trip. I'll talk about this more in a bit. In the winter, I skinned the dollar and Baldy a few times trying to take advantage of my final winter here. Then for the winter trip, I ended up in a small group and had many opportunities for leadership. Then in the spring, I did my wilderness first responder training. I did this with my friend Katie. We traveled and stayed in Boise for 5 days by ourselves. This was a good experience to work on my independence. During the course, I learned lots about wilderness medicine and leadership skills. I hope to not have to use my treatment skills I learned, but rather the prevention practices. I think over the course of my senior year, I grew my confidence to lead others beyond myself. I hope to be able to lean on these skills in the next chapter of my life. These photos are of the same beach 4 years later. Kayaking has always been something that I've had mixed experiences with. Overall, kayaking terrifies me, but I love being on the river. I decided to lead the 9th grade trip to challenge my kayaking skills and learn about leadership. I certainly did these things. I started off in my kayak just following the 3 students, making sure they didn't fall behind. The leader was Miranda Strobel, who was an incredible boater who had taught me to paddle. It was inspiring to see how she kayaks and leads. I swam twice in the first 3 days, and it wasn't a big deal. However, on Black Creek, I was the first one to go, and I took the super wrong line. I hit a rock, and I slid off, which was good, but then I was sideways into a big hole, and it flipped me. I remember being held down for way longer than usual, and I popped up and went down again. I hit some rocks, and I remember swimming really hard to try and get up. Once I finally resurfaced, I was really freaked out. I remember a few hours later, we wanted to stop at some hot springs, and I looked at myself and I was covered in bruises. After this, I decided to stop kayaking. I got pretty spooked. Also, after the trip was over, we were driving back, and Phil asked Miranda if we had any scary swims, and she said, yeah, honestly, just Charlotte's. After that day, I started to learn how to row in the Blueberry and also how to paddle guide, and row the gear boat. While I gave up on kayaking, I didn't give up on the river. In addition to river skills, I've also learned a lot about dynamics, both with students and adults. As for most outdoor trips, there was some student drama. I tried to stay out of it, but it was interesting to learn how the adults were handling it. On the other hand, there were 9 adults on this trip, 2 teachers, 2 leaders that the school hired, and 4 guides. As the trip went on, some conflicts started to arise about small things around camp and disagreements. It was interesting to observe both sides, mainly between the all-male guides and the 2 female leaders. I suspect there was some misogyny, as it is pretty common in the guiding world. This was interesting to see, as I want to be a guide in the future. This is likely something I'll face. Overall, leading this trip was a great learning experience. Finally, I'd like to thank all the amazing teachers and leaders who I've had the opportunity to learn from over the years. I look up to all of you as leaders, and I'm so grateful for that. I will and already have used my leadership skills that I've learned from my time here in the real world. In addition, when reflecting on my experiences on outdoor trips over the years and the suffering and discomfort they've brought, I realize that it's such a privilege to suffer on these trips. For so many reasons, I'm grateful to have felt discomfort in these incredible places surrounded by great people, at a great school, and it really has made me who I am today.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for taking time out of your afternoons, and we'll be back here tomorrow. Thanks to you students for those reflections. Those are great. Have a lovely afternoon and enjoy that spring weather out there.